Claire stood by the grand staircase of the Whitmore estate, the soft golden light of the chandeliers reflecting off her ivory maternity gown. She was 7 months pregnant, and the round swell of her belly was lovingly accentuated by a satin sash. Her hands rested gently atop it as she smiled politely at guests streaming into the hall. Her husband, Ethan, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a custom-tailored tuxedo, stood by her side, arm draped protectively across her back. From the outside, they looked like the perfect couple, wealthy, poised, in love, and expecting their first child. Claire felt as if she were walking through a dream. The occasion was special. Ethan's father, Richard Whitmore, was turning 70, and no expense had been spared. The estate grounds were lit with fairy lights. A string quartet played softly near the conservatory, and the smell of fresh roses drifted through the air from the grand floral arrangements dotting the hallway. The guests were a parade of influential faces, politicians, CEOs, and family friends from old money circles. But Claire had always been humble, the kind of woman who still sent handwritten thank you cards and baked cookies for the staff at Christmas. She felt slightly out of place, yet welcome, thanks to Ethan's family, especially his mother, Eleanor, who had taken her in as a daughter. "Darling, you look radiant," Eleanor said, reaching over to gently touch Claire's cheek. "I can't believe how much the baby has grown. You're glowing." Claire smiled, grateful for the affection. "I think he knows he's being celebrated tonight too." Ethan's sister, Madeline, joined them moments later, wrapping Claire in a warm hug and gushing over the baby. "You'll be such a wonderful mother. I'm so glad Ethan found someone with a real heart." Claire's cheeks flushed. Compliments like that always made her feel like she was finally accepted into a world she once felt she didn't belong to. The night seemed perfect, warm, joyful, filled with love. She sipped her sparkling water and laughed at old stories from Richard's past, enjoying every moment. But across the room, a pair of sharp eyes observed her, cool, calculating. Claire didn't notice the stiff tension that briefly passed through Ethan's shoulders, or the way he avoided looking toward the east wing. The smile on his face didn't waver, but something had shifted. Claire was the picture of grace and happiness. But she had no idea her perfect world was about to shatter. Vanessa stepped out of the sleek black town car, adjusting the hem of her blood-red cocktail dress. Her heels clicked purposefully against the marble driveway as she walked toward the grand entrance of the Whitmore estate. Her arrival wasn't planned, at least not by anyone on the official guest list, but that didn't matter to her. She wasn't just any woman. She was his woman. The one who had waited in the shadows for 2 long years while Ethan played the doting husband in public. She had been promised more. And tonight, she planned to collect. Inside, laughter echoed through the high-ceilinged halls. Vanessa moved with confidence, lips curled into a charming smile that masked the bitterness simmering underneath. Heads turned as she entered, striking, magnetic, unfamiliar. She handed her name card to the event coordinator, who looked momentarily puzzled, then nodded awkwardly and gestured her inside. Vanessa scanned the room. She spotted Ethan immediately, standing beside Claire, who looked radiant in her maternity gown, a soft glow on her face as she spoke with guests. Claire looked happy, content. It made Vanessa's stomach twist. It had all started with a business meeting 2 years ago. Ethan had walked into her boutique real estate firm, looking to purchase a private island in the Maldives. He left with more than a property. He left with Vanessa's number, and a week later, her heart. What began as stolen kisses in penthouse suites soon grew into weekend getaways, whispered promises, and the dangerous illusion of a shared future. He told her Claire was cold, distant, more interested in charity galas than in him. He said he hadn't loved her in years. Vanessa believed him. She had waited through the lies, through the secrecy, through the night he called to say Claire was pregnant. That night, she threw a glass against the wall and screamed until her voice gave out. But she didn't walk away. Because Ethan promised he'd leave. Just not yet. But weeks passed. Then months. Now Claire's stomach was swollen with life, and Ethan was still married. Still hosting family parties with Claire draped on his arm. Vanessa had had enough. She approached Ethan and Claire's circle slowly, her smile never faltering. Ethan's eyes widened slightly when he saw her, the color draining subtly from his face. He quickly composed himself. "Vanessa," he said tightly. "I didn't expect to see you here." Claire looked at Vanessa, polite but visibly unsure. "Hi, I don't think we've met." Vanessa extended her hand. "Vanessa Hart. I'm in commercial real estate. Ethan and I have been working together on a few property deals. He mentioned the party, and I thought it would be nice to come celebrate." Claire nodded, still confused. "Oh. Well, welcome." Ethan's jaw tensed. Vanessa's smile widened, victorious. She wasn't here for the cake or the music. She was here to remind Ethan and introduce herself to Claire. The evening unfolded with the smooth precision of a meticulously planned affair. Champagne glasses clinked gently, the band transitioned into a soft jazz set, and guests flowed between the ballroom and the garden patio. Claire moved through the crowd with practiced grace, greeting friends and family with a gentle hand on her belly and a warm smile that came naturally, until she began to notice something off. It started subtly. A few hushed voices behind her as she passed the dessert table. A woman in emerald leaned into her husband, whispering with raised eyebrows as her gaze followed Claire. Another guest suddenly went silent as Claire approached, pretending to be fascinated by the flower arrangements. At first, she chalked it up to typical upper-crust gossip, someone criticizing her dress, maybe wondering about the baby's name. But then it began to feel targeted. Personal. She caught sight of Vanessa again, laughing with two men by the bar, a little too loud, a little too glamorous for a stranger at a family party. Vanessa's presence clashed with the familiar warmth of the gathering. Claire watched her toss her hair, sip her drink, and catch Ethan's eye from across the room. That was the first time Claire felt something shift in her chest. The glance between them was too long, too knowing. Claire turned to find her best friend, Lena, weaving through the crowd. Lena had flown in from Chicago just to be there for Claire, and her presence was like an anchor in a suddenly stormy sea. "Hey," Lena said softly, drawing Claire aside. "Are you okay? You seem a little distracted." Claire forced a smile. "Just tired. All this standing isn't easy at 7 months." Lena hesitated, then leaned closer. "Look, I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but I've heard something. Something weird." Claire's smile faltered. "Weird how?" "I overheard a couple from Ethan's company talking. They didn't know I was nearby. One of them mentioned Ethan being seen around town with a woman who wasn't you. Said she looked like trouble." Lena lowered her voice. "I didn't believe it at first, but then I saw her." Claire's stomach tightened. "Vanessa." Lena nodded. "She doesn't fit in here." And Ethan looked panicked when he saw her. Claire glanced toward Ethan. He was speaking with his father, but his eyes kept drifting toward Vanessa. Claire's heart gave a sudden thump, one that had nothing to do with her pregnancy. "No," Claire said quickly, shaking her head. "That's not possible. Ethan loves me. He's been nothing but attentive." "I'm not saying he doesn't," Lena replied gently. "But you deserve to know if something's off." Claire nodded, trying to brush off the conversation, but something had cracked. A whisper of doubt slithered in, quiet but powerful. And when Vanessa walked by again, this time without acknowledging her, Claire could feel the tension rise like smoke. Something was wrong. And she couldn't pretend not to feel it anymore. Claire slipped away from the crowd, her heart pounding harder than it should have been for someone simply looking to freshen up. She told herself she needed a moment, just a few deep breaths away from the swirling whispers, the polite smiles that suddenly felt forced, and most of all, away from Vanessa's haunting presence. The powder room was just off the eastern corridor, tucked between the library and the wine cellar. A private space, lined with rose-gold sconces and scented with lavender oil. Claire pushed open the door slowly, her heels silent against the marble. But the moment she stepped inside, she froze. Vanessa's voice echoed off the tiled walls, low and cruel, mid-conversation on her phone. Claire instinctively stopped short and backed into the shadows, just out of sight. Of course she believed the invite was a mistake. Vanessa laughed, her voice dripping with satisfaction. She looked like she was about to offer me a gift basket. Poor thing has no idea Ethan still sneaks out to see me every week. Claire's blood ran cold. There was a pause, then Vanessa's tone turned mocking. I told you, I've got him wrapped around my finger. He keeps promising me he'll leave her, but now she's waddling around like some sacred cow and suddenly I'm supposed to be patient? Please. I'm done playing nice. Another pause. Then came the dagger. I swear, I'm going to finish what I started. I didn't wait 2 years to be second to that pregnant cow. Claire's breath caught in her throat. The words hit harder than a slap. Her hand instinctively flew to her stomach, her baby kicking softly in response, as if sensing her distress. Vanessa chuckled one last time before ending the call. Claire stepped silently back from the doorway, her mind reeling, heart hammering so loud she feared it might give her away. She quickly dabbed her face with a tissue, composed her expression, and waited. Moments later, Vanessa strutted out, not noticing Claire as she rounded the corner with a satisfied smirk. Claire entered the now empty bathroom and locked the door behind her. She stared at her reflection, makeup flawless, smile intact, eyes glossy with unshed tears. She couldn't scream. Not here. Not yet. Instead, she stood still, quietly shattered. Then she took a breath, fixed her lipstick, and walked out as if nothing had happened. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly as the waitstaff rolled in the massive, 5-tiered cake decorated in gold leaf and delicate sugar roses. A gentle hush swept over the crowd as Richard Whitmore stepped forward, raising a glass to thank everyone for attending. Claire stood just behind him, her hand gently resting on her stomach, her smile poised and practiced. Despite the chaos swirling in her mind since the powder room incident, she had kept her composure. She had told herself she'd confront Ethan privately, later, far away from the curious eyes and clinking glasses. But fate had other plans. Ethan was beside her, his face stiff with a smile, and Vanessa lingered on the edge of the gathering, still sipping wine with an air of defiance. Claire could feel her gaze like a needle pricking the back of her neck. She didn't look. She wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Richard finished his toast, laughter and applause echoed through the room, and someone handed Ethan a knife to begin the ceremonial cake cutting. He took Claire's hand, guiding it toward the handle, and the room leaned in, waiting for the perfect photo moment. Then, Vanessa's voice pierced the silence. Oh, come on. Are we really pretending this is the happy little family? The laughter died. Heads turned. Claire froze. Ethan dropped the knife. Vanessa took a step forward, her heels clicking with aggression. Let me guess, next comes a toast about loyalty and true love? That's rich, Ethan. Really? Vanessa. Ethan growled under his breath. Don't do this. But she ignored him, eyes locked on Claire. You walk around here like you're some glowing goddess, gracious, gentle Claire. But tell me, do they all know your husband is in my bed every other night? A stunned gasp swept through the crowd like a wave. Claire turned pale, her mouth opening slightly as though to speak, but no words came. Her heart thudded so loud she could barely hear. She took a step back, trying to steady herself. Don't, Ethan said again, stepping toward Vanessa. We'll talk outside. But Vanessa was just getting started. She's not some angel. She's just the one who got lucky with the ring and the baby bump. Don't act like she didn't know something was going on. No one is that naive. Claire's lips trembled. The tears she'd buried deep all evening threatened to surface. She turned away, shaking her head, desperate to leave with what little dignity she had left. But she didn't make it more than 2 steps. Vanessa stormed forward and, without warning, raised her hand and slapped Claire hard across the face. A collective gasp burst from the room. Claire staggered backward, stumbling on her heels as she clutched her belly protectively. Her hand flew to her cheek, eyes wide with shock and pain. For a split second, the only sound in the room was the stunned hush of disbelief. Claire! Ethan shouted, rushing forward. He grabbed Vanessa roughly by the arm, dragging her back as she still seethed with fury. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he barked. "She deserved it," Vanessa snapped. "Lying to everyone, parading around like a queen while you crawl into my bed after every board meeting." People were filming. Claire could see a phone held discreetly behind a wine glass, another guest not even bothering to hide theirs. She turned her face away, not from shame, but to stop herself from crying in front of them. The room had gone from celebration to scandal in seconds. And the world was about to see everything. Ethan's voice boomed over the shocked murmurs that buzzed through the ballroom like a swarm of wasps. "No one posts that video, do you hear me?" he shouted, pointing at a young man near the bar who had been openly recording. "Delete it. Right now." The guest hesitated, caught between fear and curiosity. Others tucked their phones away, but not before the damage had been done. The image of a pregnant wife being slapped by a mistress in the middle of a millionaire's family celebration was far too sensational to keep hidden. Whispers escalated to murmurs, murmurs to murmured commentary, and some guests discreetly left the scene to make private calls, their eyes alight with the glow of scandal. Claire stood off to the side, pale, silent, her cheeks still stinging, though the pain was more emotional than physical now. One hand stayed on her belly, the other gently bracing herself on the table behind her as she processed what had just happened. Her heart raced, but she didn't speak. She didn't move. Ethan rushed toward her, his face flushed and frantic. "Claire," he said, trying to take her hand, but she pulled it away slowly. "Don't," she whispered, barely audible. "She's insane," he said, gesturing wildly behind him where Vanessa was being escorted out by 2 security guards. "You know that. She shouldn't have even been here, she snuck in. This wasn't supposed to happen." Claire didn't respond. Her eyes stared straight ahead, glassy and unfocused. "She's obsessed with me," he continued, his voice pleading now. "She's been unstable for months. I tried to cut it off with her. I told her we were done, especially after you got pregnant." Claire blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. "You have to believe me," Ethan said, lowering his voice and stepping closer. "This doesn't have to be a public mess. I'll handle it. I'll fix it. I'm going to have the security team scrub the guest list, take down the footage, and I'll personally call every single person here if I have to." He turned to his assistant, snapping, "Get legal on the phone now. Anyone who leaks that video, we sue them into oblivion." Back at Claire's side, he leaned in with softer desperation. "Don't let this ruin us. Please. You and me, we've built something beautiful. A family. That woman, she's nothing. A mistake." But Claire said nothing. Her silence was louder than a scream. The crowd began to disperse, the party unraveling into uneasy chaos. Waiters cleared half-full glasses of champagne, the quartet packed their instruments in silence. The air was heavy with shame, tension, and the sharp scent of something breaking. And Claire. She just stood there, unmoving. Ethan kept talking. Apologizing. Justifying. But Claire had already heard the truth, through whispers, glances, phone calls and finally, a slap in front of the world. She didn't need to hear any more. Claire walked down the grand hallway, each step heavy but deliberate, her heels clicking softly against the marble as the echoes of the broken party faded behind her. The music had stopped, the laughter had vanished, and in its place was a hollow quiet. The estate that once felt like a fairy tale now seemed like a gilded prison. She said nothing to anyone, not to the guests still whispering in corners, not to Eleanor or Madeline, who stood frozen near the main staircase with tears in their eyes. She didn't need sympathy or excuses. Not tonight. Her clutch bag sat on a side table near the entrance, where she had left it earlier. She picked it up slowly, her fingers trembling just enough to betray her inner storm. A housekeeper came rushing forward with her coat, offering a soft, "Ma'am, are you all right?" But Claire couldn't even find the strength to answer. She slipped into the coat and reached for the door. "Claire, wait, please." Ethan's voice rang out behind her, his footsteps quick and desperate as he jogged after her. She paused, not because she wanted to hear him, but because her body needed one last breath before walking away from everything she had once believed was hers. He reached her, stepping in front of the door, blocking her path. "Don't go like this. Please," he said, voice tight. "We need to talk. You can't just leave." Claire raised her eyes to him slowly. Her voice, when it came, was calm but trembling. "Do you love her?" Ethan's lips parted, but nothing came out. "Answer me," she said more firmly now. "Do you love Vanessa?" His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked away, just for a second, but it was enough. Claire felt her heart crack again, but this time, there was no blood, no begging, no fury. Just the cold, final realization. "You can lie to everyone else," she whispered. "But not to me." He reached for her arm. "Claire, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was never supposed to go this far. You're my wife, my family." She stepped back, pulling her arm away. "Then why did you treat me like a placeholder? Why did you let her humiliate me in front of everyone? Why did you let me love you so blindly?" Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't try to hide them anymore. They streamed freely, hot and relentless down her cheeks. Her baby kicked softly beneath her ribs, as if reminding her she was not walking away alone. She looked at Ethan one last time, really looked at him. And what she saw wasn't the man she had married. It was a stranger who had let betrayal fester behind polished walls and designer suits. "I'm done," she whispered. Then she opened the door, stepped out into the cold night, and didn't look back. It began with a single post, just one 30-second clip uploaded to a private account that quickly caught fire. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times, then millions. The video, taken from a shaky phone camera behind a centerpiece of orchids, captured the exact moment Vanessa's hand struck Claire's cheek. The audio was muffled but clear enough: Vanessa's venomous words, Claire's stunned silence, and the horrified gasp that followed. The title of the post read simply, "Millionaire's Mistress Slaps Pregnant Wife at Family Party." By morning, it had made national headlines. Major news outlets ran with the story. Gossip blogs dissected every frame of the footage. Twitter exploded with hashtags, #Slapgate, #PoorClaire, and #WhitmoreScandal trended for days. TikTokers reenacted the scene, influencers posted their outrage, and YouTubers uploaded reaction videos by the hour. It was the perfect storm of wealth, betrayal, and violence, and the internet was ravenous. Ethan, once admired in business circles as a self-made millionaire and philanthropist, became a villain overnight. Journalists uncovered old photos of him with Vanessa, timelines were cross-examined, and insiders from his company began leaking emails and texts. Public sympathy poured in, for Claire, for the baby, for the betrayal. Behind closed doors, Ethan was spiraling. He sat in his office, unshaven and sleepless, watching the video play on loop as his PR team scrambled. "We need to issue a statement," one of them urged. "Or better yet, a full interview with Claire. A reconciliation angle." "She left me," Ethan muttered, rubbing his temple. "She's not coming back." His publicist groaned. "Then we need damage control. Now." But it was already too late. Within 48 hours, 3 major investors pulled out of Ethan's real estate development firm. One of his largest contracts was suspended pending ethical review. Magazine covers that once praised his rise to power now printed side-by-side shots of Claire's tear-streaked face and Vanessa's smug expression. Eleanor and Madeline, once Ethan's strongest defenders, publicly distanced themselves. "We were horrified by the events that occurred," Eleanor stated in a press release. "Our loyalty is to Claire and the child." Ethan tried to issue his own apology, but it came off hollow. Too polished. Too little, too late. His reputation, once spotless, crumbled like a house of cards. Deals collapsed. Partners ghosted him. Invitations vanished. And Claire. She remained silent. She didn't give interviews. She didn't make a public statement. But that only added to the public's admiration. Her silence, her strength, her quiet dignity became the story. And Ethan's desperation only made him look weaker. He tried calling her, messaging her, sending flowers. Nothing worked. Every door he tried to open slammed shut. Ethan had once believed he could control everything. Narratives, people, perception. But now, the whole world had seen who he truly was. And they weren't looking away. Claire watched the chaos from a distance, not out of fear or shame, but from a quiet place of clarity. While the world dissected every angle of the viral slap and media outlets begged for her side of the story, she stayed silent. No interviews. No teary statements. No PR-crafted responses. She let the world speak while she listened, healed, and rebuilt. In the weeks that followed, Claire moved into a modest rental home on the outskirts of the city. Far from the mansion, far from Ethan's wealth, far from the life that had looked perfect on the outside but had rotted beneath. Her days were slow at first, filled with long walks, prenatal checkups, and tearful moments on the couch as the baby kicked and the silence settled in. But slowly, she began to channel the pain into purpose. It started when a single woman messaged her privately on social media. "What you went through gave me the courage to leave my abusive fiancé. Thank you for standing tall." Then, another. And another. Claire didn't respond publicly, but she read every word, every story of heartbreak, of betrayal, of survival. And soon, she knew what she had to do. She rented a small space in a local women's wellness center and founded Rise Again, a support group for women who had suffered emotional abuse, public humiliation, and betrayal at the hands of those they loved most. What began as 5 women in folding chairs around a coffee pot became 20. Then 40. Then chapters began to form in other cities, led by survivors who had seen Claire's story and found their own strength mirrored in her silence. Claire didn't need cameras or microphones to be heard. Her message was in the safe spaces she created, in the open arms she extended to strangers, in the raw truth she allowed others to speak without judgment. She also began working with therapists and legal advisors to help women navigate emotional manipulation, financial dependency, and toxic relationships. She used her own savings, every cent Ethan couldn't touch, to fund the project. What the world saw as scandal, Claire transformed into service. Quietly, respectfully, she became a symbol. Women across the country wrote articles, made videos, and posted about how Claire represented resilience. Not just because she survived a slap heard around the world, but because she didn't let that moment define her. She refused to be a victim of someone else's choices. She rose. And still, Claire never named Ethan publicly. She never detailed what happened behind closed doors. She let her work speak louder than any exposé. Her baby was due soon. Every time she rubbed her belly and felt the flutter of tiny feet inside her, she reminded herself, this was the life she was protecting. Not just hers, but a better world for the child she was about to bring into it. Claire's voice didn't need to be loud. It just needed to be real. And the world heard it loud and clear. Vanessa had never felt more alive than in the days following the slap. The video went viral, and though most of the attention was negative, she clung to the spotlight like it was a prize. She posted cryptic selfies, offered suggestive captions, "I said what everyone else was thinking," and made a handful of appearances on low-level gossip podcasts. She called herself bold, unfiltered, real. She thought she was winning. What Vanessa didn't expect was just how fast the tide would turn. It started with screenshots, private texts she'd sent to friends, leaked anonymously online. The messages painted a picture far worse than anything caught on camera. In them, Vanessa laughed about wrecking Claire's fairy tale, bragged about manipulating Ethan, and mocked Claire's pregnancy in cruel, dehumanizing terms. She called the baby just another anchor, and referred to herself as the future Mrs. Whitmore, completely detached from reality. Public outrage erupted instantly. Within days, users on TikTok and Twitter launched threads detailing Vanessa's history. Former co-workers, clients, and acquaintances came forward, sharing stories of her manipulation, dishonesty, and narcissistic behavior. A former employer revealed she had falsified parts of her resume. A small cosmetics brand she had once modeled for announced they were removing all her campaign images. "She doesn't represent our values," the brand wrote publicly. Others followed suit. The attention she once bathed in became toxic. Her name trended daily, but now alongside words like hashtag Vanessa exposed, hashtag mean mistress, and hashtag cancel Vanessa. She was labeled a homewrecker, a narcissist, a cautionary tale. Her social media turned from glamour shots to desperate defenses. "You don't know the full story," she posted in shaky Instagram stories. "Ethan used me. But no one cared anymore. Brands severed ties. Agencies refused to return calls. She lost her influencer deals, speaking invites, and social standing almost overnight. Her followers dropped by the thousands. Even Ethan, who had once fed her delusions, ignored her attempts to reconnect. Alone and exposed, Vanessa spiraled. Her polished image crumbled. She stopped posting. She disappeared from public life as quickly as she had entered it. The world moved on without her. And in the silence that followed, all Vanessa had left was the echo of her own destruction, one she had orchestrated with her own hands. Ethan sat stiffly beneath the studio lights, his jaw clenched as the cameras rolled. The interviewer across from him leaned forward, her tone gentle but direct. "Do you regret what happened, Mr. Whitmore?" He looked into the lens, sighing deeply, his voice laced with carefully rehearsed sorrow. "I do. Every single day. I made mistakes, terrible ones. I hurt someone I love more than anything, and I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life." The clip aired on every major network by evening. Headlines screamed, "Ethan Whitmore breaks silence, the millionaire's regret." In the segment, he spoke of pain, of regret, of the misunderstandings that spiraled out of control. He referred to Vanessa only as a lapse in judgment, downplaying the affair and never once taking full responsibility. But those watching, especially those who had followed Claire's quiet, graceful path, saw through it. This wasn't a man broken by heartbreak. It was a man broken by consequence. Privately, Ethan tried everything. He sent Claire long handwritten letters. He called her repeatedly, leaving voicemails filled with promises and memories. He had flowers delivered weekly, sometimes entire bouquets of white tulips, her favorite. He even arranged a private meeting with her attorney, offering to put the estate in her name, to relinquish shares in his company, to give her anything she wanted, except the truth. Because deep down, Ethan didn't miss Claire. He missed what Claire made him look like. The polished image. The perfect wife. The self-made family man. Without her, he had become the face of betrayal. A brand no one wanted to buy. And Claire knew it. She didn't respond to the letters. She didn't return the calls. She didn't even flinch when his publicist floated the idea of a televised reconciliation, an emotional sit-down, complete with a donation to her foundation. She rejected every offer without a word. For Claire, this wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. Real freedom, from lies, manipulation, and the constant performance of perfection. Ethan had gambled everything for ego and illusion. And he lost the only thing real he ever had. The cottage sat at the edge of a sleepy countryside town, its stone walls wrapped in ivy, its windows framed with white shutters that opened to a garden filled with lavender and marigolds. Claire stood barefoot on the back porch, holding a steaming mug of tea, her hair loose and face soft in the golden morning light. Inside the house, baby coos and giggles echoed from the nursery. A year had passed since the night everything unraveled. 1 year since betrayal became public spectacle, since love had shown its sharpest edge. And yet, somehow, Claire had bloomed in the ruins. Her son, Emmett, was 10 months old now, curious, wide-eyed, and full of laughter. His presence filled every corner of the house with joy, and every inch of Claire's heart with purpose. She had once feared raising him alone, but now, she couldn't imagine it any other way. Their life was quiet but full. Sunlit mornings, long walks through the fields, storybooks before naps, and music playing softly as she worked late into the night. Claire's non-profit, Rise Again, had grown beyond her wildest hopes. What began as a small support group had evolved into a nationally recognized organization, offering legal aid, housing referrals, counseling, and safe community for women in crisis. Donations poured in, many from strangers who had watched her story unfold and found courage in her silence. She didn't speak often in the media, but when she did, it was with measured grace, never to retaliate, only to uplift. One afternoon, a friend visiting the cottage posted a simple video online. Claire, seated on a picnic blanket, laughing as Emmett toddled clumsily toward her, arms outstretched. His giggle was pure, infectious, full of light. The video went viral within hours. The caption read, "She chose peace. Look at the joy it gave her." It was shared by mothers, activists, survivors, celebrities. The world watched again, but this time, not for drama or scandal, but for inspiration. Claire had become a quiet symbol of what it meant to rebuild. Not through rage or revenge, but with boundaries, self-respect, and purpose. Back in the city, Ethan's name barely surfaced anymore. His empire had eroded, investors gone, projects dissolved, reputation beyond repair. He lived in a penthouse he could no longer afford to furnish, attending events he was no longer invited to speak at. His fall from grace was sharp and silent. Vanessa vanished just as quickly. Her name was only whispered now in cautionary tales and articles about internet downfalls. She had faded into irrelevance, no longer infamous, just forgotten. But Claire lived fully. She planted tomatoes in her garden. She read poetry by the fireplace. She held her baby close at night, whispering stories of resilience into his tiny ears. And every morning, she looked into the mirror and saw a woman she was proud of, not because she had survived scandal, but because she had created something beautiful out of it. Her legacy wasn't marked by headlines or heartbreak. It was marked by peace. And that peace, she had earned every bit of.